What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Track the Harmonic, where we explore the world of harmonic technical analysis. I'm your host, Lord MC, and in this video, I'm excited to take you through a detailed analysis on the indices and some of the blue chip stocks. Before we dive into the charts, though, let me give you a quick heads up that this week is going to be a roller coaster of a ride in the markets. We have several important economic events happening that are likely to cause some volatility. So firstly, we do have JOLTS job openings report coming out, which is a key indicator of the labor market's health. Then we have PMI, which is the Purchasing Managers Index, which gives us an insight in the manufacturing and services sector's performance. Next up, we do also have the much anticipated Federal Reserve's interest rate decision, which would undoubtedly be a significant impact on the markets. Following that, we do have the Fed press conference where Powell will talk and give more insights into the current stance on the economy and the markets. Moreover, we also have the balance of trade report, which is a critical indicator of a country's economic health. And we cannot also forget about the non-farm payrolls report, which is one of the most closely watched economic indicators by traders and investors alike. So the next, but not least, we do also have the unemployment rate, which is also expected to impact the market significantly. And also we have more continuation of earnings, which one of the big boys that we're looking at that are playing in this week is Apple. So given all these crucial economic events happening this week, it's crucial to stay up to date with the market's performance and be prepared for any potential changes in the trend. So without further ado, let's dive into the charts and see what they're telling us coming into a very volatile week. So jumping over here to SPY here, SPY on Friday's close went as high as 415.94, the low being 411.43, and it finally closed at 415.93. So it was a good day for the SPY here after significantly came down to touch 404 off of FRC situation that went on. Quickly bounced off a critical level of support, which I have mentioned in my videos. If you had broken down from 411, the next level of support would be 408, and then lastly, you would like to hold 404, in which case exactly what happened. It played out. You came back down to test 404, and you bounced all the way, closing it on a strong close on Friday. So harmonically, what are we looking at here for the SPY? So SPY here did close on Thursday with an HSI arrow to the upside, and it's now above XA again. So this shows strength. This is actually coming back up with strength, and volume is starting to pick up. If I bring out my indicators here and my drawings, what is our next level of resistance should we have more continuation to the upside? So I do have this. I know there's a lot of things going on in this chart, but this line is the 2009 trend line. A lot of people say it's 2008. I call it the 2009 trend line because this is the actual lows of when the whole financial crisis happened in 2008. The lows were in 2009. So this stretches all the way over here, which we have been rejected a couple times here. So we are approaching that level now because we extended this 2009 trend line here goes up to the 417, 4018, which is also the entrance of the gap. So if there is continuation to the upside next week, I do believe that we will test this line here. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens if it does happen, to see if we get rejection. For a couple of times we did come up above this line here, and we came back down. So you could have a situation where you come above it, maybe gap fill and you come back down, or just extend a little bit and you come back down to test XA at 414. So I'm going to give you guys a bullish case scenario for continuation if there's just bullish all around movement in the market next week. So if you do come up and break this line here, the next level of resistance would be that gap fill that everybody's been looking to fill here, or hopefully to fill here, is at 422. And then harmonically speaking, you could potentially go up to hop here at 423.62. The HSI is indicating that it wants to maybe test that midline, which if you do cross that midline and go to the overbought zones, you can hit that potential 423 hop level off of this bearish bat pattern. Should you get rejected off the midline here, you could come back down, maybe retest this line here at 2009 trend line at 417, come back down to test XA, consolidate, because we do have a lot of things that are happening this week with all the economic data that's coming out as well as earnings. You can come back down, maybe consolidate until that market picks a direction, and then you continue pushing. Should you continue and get rejected here at 417ish, you come back down, lose XA, you could come back down to test the 21 EMA and test 411 again, test 408, come back to 404, in which case if you lose 404, you come down to complete the type 1 reaction at 401.93. But I quickly want to jump over to the weekly here real quick to also see the strength of how we closed the week. So a lot of people have been talking about this hanging man candle, which by definition is a reversal candle. So why I disagree with that is because there's a lot of things that are going on here. We have to look at what was the reason as well why we wicked down all the way to 404. Obviously, there was a mixed bag when it comes to economic data that came out last week. With the GDP and PCE was a mixed bag. It was some of it were nothing burgers. The PCE month over month was relatively to stay the same. No change there. The only thing that changed was the year over year, and it changed slightly. GDP was also a mixed bag, and the only thing that was a little bit negative was the jobless claims. And obviously, in my opinion, the reason why we went to test 404 was the whole banking situation with FRC. So what ended up happening, if I just look at it just from a volume to price analysis on the candle just by itself and ignoring everything else, to me this shows much more strength on the bullish case than the bearish case. The bears were able to bring it down to 404, but the bulls ended up bringing it back to close not just above last week's close, but the highs of last week's close, way just a few cents above it. So to me, that's considered bullish for more upside. If we're looking at historical data here, just by previous hanging man candles, if I go back here and look at recent hanging mans and see what happens on the weekly, you could tell here the most recent hanging man candle was here, right? It's almost the same setup as we're having here with the doji the prior week, right? So where was it? Right here. This is a doji indecision candle, and then you had a hanging man, and you continue pushing to the upside. So there are situations where these hanging mans have been pretty weak, pretty strong, or they could relatively come back down and then continue pushing on up, right? Another hanging man candle was right here and right here. You kind of came down the next week or consolidated same levels, and you continue pushing. Overall, the hanging man candles on the weekly have, I do want to share that there is one here I found where it's this one right here. So the difference between where we are, in my opinion, between this uptrend here, because you want to have a hanging man on an uptrend, in which case you have a hanging man on an uptrend here, but the following week here we left on an indecision here. So if I'm looking at this reversal candle here to play out, and then we have this indecision, to me that would signify that this hanging man candle is actually potentially playing out, right? But in this instance, we have the opposite way. We have indecision here. We close above higher, and for the most part, even if we were to look at this here, it did come down, but then you created new higher highs. That's when we went to all-time highs. But I want to also bring out this candlestick patterns indicator here, where it does show that it's printed a hanging man candle. And if we go back to the most recent hanging man candle that this indicator has called out, we could also look back over here where you did have a hanging man candle and you continued pushing on to the upside. So to me, it still looks a bit bullish here for the market. You have another hanging man candle here, tongue twister there, sorry, but you keep pushing up to the upside the week after you print these hanging man candles. So for me right here, it still shows that there's a potential here. You do have a bullish steep crab pattern here. You're also about to have a 2050 crossover on the weekly, which is bullish, and you could potentially test target 2 at 433.02. Should this hanging man candle actually start signaling that it's a reversal with bad economic data, bad earnings, whatever, you could come back down to test that 404 on the weekly, and then in which case you can come back down. This 396 level is, in my opinion, where I would start flipping bearish. 396 is a critical key for the SPY. If you lose that, you come back down, and then you could see this type 2 reaction to XA here at 357 and 324, but that's still down the line. So that's all I wanted to share with the hanging man candle on the weekly. Jumping over to the triple Qs. Let's go to the 1 day here. So the triple Qs on Friday closed, it went as high as 322.65, the low being 318.96, before closing the day at 322.56. In my opinion, out of the indices, the triple Qs has been leading the way. You finally were able to break above 318.72 and close above it. So if I just come up here, remove some of my drawings here first. I had actually to bring it back up. This 318.72 has been a strong level of resistance. We actually consolidated for what seemed forever. If I go back here, we consolidated for until like 20 days, right? If I count just this period where we're consolidating here off of this, what looked like a bull flag, then a falling wedge, and you broke out. Whatever you want to call it, bull flag, falling wedge, doesn't matter. You consolidated here, and to me, it looks like you're breaking out. So this 318.72 has been a previous harmonic level where you did break out on Thursday, and then Friday, obviously, when you want to break out out of a certain key resistance or support level, you want to break out and you want to retest. So Friday was that retest. You came back down, you touched that 318.72, and you closed on average volume to the upside. So this could potentially keep pushing on upwards to that hop level at 330.99. So good volume that's coming in. The HSI did cross the midline, so that could be more continuation to reach those overbought zones. The AMP RSI still looks like it has more momentum to the upside. But in case it doesn't, you can come back down to see if it holds support here at 318.72. If it doesn't, you can come down to 313.84, then 305.69 before finishing this to a type 1 reaction all the way down to target 1 here at 294.95. So the Nasdaq does look a little bit more bullish to me in comparison to the SPY here, but we will have to see. I'm just going to quickly share the weekly here. So the weekly, there's no current harmonic pattern, but we did close on higher volume than the previous close. This I guess you can argue the case that this is a doji kind of candle pattern here, where you did generate an HSI dot, but that looks like it's kind of invalidating right now. More continuation to the upside. You are looking like a bull flag here even on the weekly. You could continue pushing out to see if this coming week is that actual breakout. So Nasdaq looks good for more continuation. I'll definitely be paying attention more to the Nasdaq than the SPY, but yeah, the Nasdaq looks good in my opinion. Jumping over to the Dow Jones. So the Dow Jones did come up here, have a bearish bat pattern where you almost hit that type 1 reaction at target 1 at 330, but it found support here. It did create a HSI arrow to the upside, and then right now on Friday you went as high as 341.04, the low being 337 before closing the day at 341.03 on above XA here at 340.27 of this bearish harmonic pattern. You are setting up for what looks like potentially on Monday, depending on how strong you close on Monday, for 3 white soldiers potentially. So if you have that, as we know, the 3 white soldiers are a bullish pattern there that it can continue pushing up to the upside. If that is to happen, you have resistance here at 343, which has been a strong level of resistance. If we can tell here, right here, you got rejected hard. You came back here, rejected, and then you came up and tested 345. You came back down again. So this range here, again, 343.09, rejected here, and that would be the next level I'd be looking at. Should you continue to break 340.27, look to break this important level here at 343.09, and then finally 345.35 to test hop there. Should you fail to close above XA here, you can come back down and test the 50 EMA at 333 before closing the target 1 at 330.96 and maybe target 2 at 324. The HSI and all the indicators here, harmonic indicators, are flipping to the upside for more continuation potentially to the upside. So jumping to the weekly here for the Dow Jones. The Dow Jones did close strong, similar to the SPY here, so definitely on increased volume. You are approaching HSI here to that overbought zone, but in my opinion, you could potentially test that level, like I said, at 343.09 before some resistance there. So that's all I have to say about the Dow Jones. Jumping over to the VIX here. The VIX, very interesting week here. We haven't seen the VIX close below 1577 in a long time. So let me just bring over here so you guys could see when the last time we actually visited 1577 was back here in November 2021. So crazy 52-week lows here that the VIX here has come down to. So for me, what is the next level of support here? If I'm to look at this this bearish crab pattern, if we were to take the fib retracement tool, you did fall below the 100% retracement at 1706. The 1.272 would be 1332, which is, I think, is a little bit too low there for it to go to. Could it go down there? Who knows? Maybe. But right now, with everything that's going on in the markets, and it's kind of, that would be a very bullish indicator, but for the markets if it goes down there. But I like to look at the weekly here. On the weekly, you do have a longer what this looks like a bearish shark pattern here, and for the bearish shark pattern, you did fall below target 2 here. So the next target I'd be looking at is that 100% retracement of the bearish shark pattern, which is at 1410 here. So I'm going to keep a line here to keep that for next week to see if it decides to go there. I do want to share that the last time it hit 1410 was back here in February 2020. You came back down and then you just shot back up. So at any given moment, something can happen with the VIX where you do jump up and spike up from that 14 level range. So definitely we'll keep an eye out on that. But right now it's ultimately bearish. Right now even the HSI still has more room to the downside for that oversold zone, as well as AMP RSI. Even on the 1 day, I do believe it's also trailing like it wants to come down to test that midline. So depending on the data and everything, we're going to see what the VIX does. But jumping over to Apple here, we remove some of these drawings. Apple continued to make new 52-week highs. They went as high as 169.85 on Friday, the low being 167.88 before closing the day at 169.68. So there's more continuation from Apple. There's obviously earnings that are coming up for Apple on, I believe, Thursday this week. So this is going to be a very, very key week for Apple. Apple could, the next level I have for Apple is at 170 off of this. I think the weekly is the one that gives me a better indication of where it's going to, because right now you are above the 786 of this harmonic bullish bat pattern. So the next level of the 886 would be 170.88, which would find some resistance there potentially. And then if not, you break that above that, you could test the 100% retracement of this bat pattern at point A, which is 176.15. After that, there's potential to test the all-time highs. So what is the HSI and RSI and everything, AMP RSI, telling us harmonically? You cross the midline, you have potential room for this to keep going. There's a lot of things going on with the option chain as well, a lot of open interest, so definitely keep an eye out on that. So next level, like I said, is 170. If you don't hold 170, you can come back down to that 168 and then 166. So 166 for the most part has been a strong level of resistance in the past year where we couldn't break above it, and you finally broke above it. So if you lose 166, you can come back down to 164 and then target to at 158. Jumping to the weekly here. So the weekly for Apple here, obviously continuation to the upside with relatively same volume as the week we closed before, but to me it still looks a little bit bullish to the upside. You could be coming down here on the HSI is telling you that it's almost at the overbought zone, so I do think it has a shot to test 170 and then come back and retest maybe at worst 166 before continuation to the downside. But definitely keep an eye out on Apple, because Apple on good earnings, in my opinion, will move the markets. Jumping over to Microsoft, go to the 1 day here. So Microsoft, very bullish close out of the blue chips last week. You went as high as 308.93. The low was 303.31 on Friday before closing the day at 307.26, where you did hit above HOP finally, and you closed above HOP with volume. Obviously, Microsoft reported good earnings. You gapped up on the earnings, and you had an HSI arrow continuation to the upside. So what can we expect here harmonically for Microsoft? They're still crossing the midline here. You are a little bit overextended on the RSI, so you could come back down, test 300, and if you lose that, test 297, maybe gap fill here, and then test 276 on bearish data. I just want to come over here to the 1 week, because the 1 week continues to be bullish for Microsoft. There's no denying the way the week closed on increase in volume by a lot. Obviously, you got volume because all the things that went on with earnings and as well as economic data. But if we go back Back in March when I made my video here where I said it looks like Microsoft was going to continue pushing because it engulfed a couple candles here, and now it's doing the same thing again. It engulfed 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess 3. You can't count this if you don't count the wick here. So 3 weeks it engulfed again with continuation to the upside. So what can we expect here for Microsoft here if this continues? Harmonically, we can see next level here would be 326.53 if there's more continuation to the upside for Microsoft. The RSI is almost a little bit overbought here on the weekly, but at any given moment this thing can continue pushing as well. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye on Microsoft. I do believe there is a gap up here. Yep, I think this got filled. Never mind. Nope, it's still there. Let's actually draw it out real quick. See if this got filled. Oh, there we go. There's still a gap up there. You could gap up here, which is at 309.87. Call it 310, and then continue to the upside here to test maybe 315 here, which would be the March 22 highs. So Microsoft still looks good to the upside. Maybe some cooling off next week because it has gone up pretty insane the past couple weeks. So keep an eye on Microsoft. Jumping over to Tesla here. So Tesla, obviously bad earnings, didn't do so well in earnings, and you came back down and you almost gap filled, where you did find support at the entrance of the gap, and where you generated this new ABCD pattern, where you did generate an HSI arrow on the completion of point D, and it's looking like it wants to come up here for a type 1 reaction. The HSI is about to cross the midline, or at least test it, where the RSI, regular RSI, you kind of double bottomed and are now coming up to the upside. So if there's more continuation in volume, I would like to see volume on Tesla come to pick up in volume, so you could test here. The next level of support or resistance would be 164.67, and then 167.98, and then target 1 off this ABCD pattern, where I do have a target here, a prior target at 177.12, which has been for the better part of a month or two has been support here, where it did bounce, but obviously we gapped down, and that was because of bad earnings for Tesla. So definitely for Tesla, you need to get above the 177 range for a continuation to the upside. So maybe test that 192 again and then get back up 200. But if you get rejected here at 164, you can continue to come back down to test hop here, fill that gap exactly where hop is. So very important level. The reason why I say that you need to hold a 164 67 is because that's where we capitulated back in December, right? You bounced off of here and then you finally flushed all the way down. So key level to hold, definitely want to break above 164.67. So jumping to the weekly here, the weekly, you do have a bullish bat pattern where you did generate an HSI dot last 2 weeks, and you're kind of closing here with what looks to be like a dragonfly doji here. So still indecision, still kind of maybe it can flip reverse. This is a flip sign reversal coming back up to test BC at 171.46, but the HSI, at least on the weekly, still looks like it has room to the downside here to that oversold zone. So definitely keep an eye out on Tesla. Hopefully it could regain some of that selling pressure that it got this week. So jumping over to Amazon here. So Amazon on the daily, you did, for some reason they beat earnings, and then I think in the conference call they had something to mention where their AWS or cloud services was a little weak. So you were strong here. You did close above the 200 EMA on Thursday, but then like previous levels here in the past, you did test a 200 and you came back down. So we tested here, we came back down. You closed above it, but now because off of Friday, you were a little bit bearish here, and you're now back below the 200 EMA and SMA. So what can we expect here? You did close finally 1 day above XA, which is the target I was looking at, which was good, but now you lost the XA here. So if it doesn't hold support here, the next level would be 103.46, then $100, and then hop at 96. Should you find support here off the 90 EMA, because at best that's what looks like it's come down to the 21 the past week, You find support, you come back up, regain the 200 EMA at 107.54, and then you could potentially see the gap fill here at 114.77 before maybe coming back up to test target 121.09. On the weekly here, you did generate what looks like I guess you'd call it a doji. It's still in the middle decision, but with an HSI dot, right? So the weekly, you did have a 921 crossover, which you did push up, but you got rejected off the 50 EMA. So you're kind of sandwiched between the 50 EMA and the 9 EMA. So you not hold this level here. Like I said, last point of support would be $100, where you can come back down to test XA 93.54. So still too early to see if this is market continuation to the upside. I do believe if you do have everything's good, pushes on up forward in the market, you could have a good shot at testing the 200 EMA on the weekly, which would be 120, and then hit 122.39 on target one off of this bullish bat pattern. So we'll keep an eye on Amazon. Jumping over to Google here. So Google, let's go to the 1 day. So Google has this bearish alt bat pattern where you did report earnings, and then for some reason you came down pre-market, but you were able to manage most of the gains, and you did went as high as 107.35, the low being 105.09 on Friday, and closing the day at 107.34. So ultimately you still look like you're trading in this channel for Google. You do have a potential golden cross for both the EMAs and the SMAs here happening. That could happen next week. So you did wick down all the way to the 21 EMA, and you came back up here. So volume is starting to decrease a little bit. You did cross the HSI midline, so if this continues harmonically, the next level I'd be looking at is 110.73. If you can close above that, then you're looking at 113.47. If you get rejected back down for 107.34, sorry about that. If you come back down and not hold 107.34, you can come back to test 104.78, test the 200 EMA at 102.75, and then maybe potentially do the type 1 reaction here at 101.30, and then reverse back up to hop for that type 2 return. Still have to see if that's going to be the case off the economic data and earnings for Apple, which would move everything else. If we jump over to the weekly here, the weekly still looks like pretty strong here, more volume to the upside here, more increased buying pressure here. So harmonically, you have the 1 week here with a crab pattern. So the next level you want to test here is at target 1 here at 109.39. Should you continue, find and hold support above that, you see 125.49 on target 2 to complete that type 1 reaction for Google. So very, very volatile week that's coming up here in the markets. Just one quick one that I'm going to add here is NVIDIA. So NVIDIA. What can we say about this stock that everybody's been looking to see when this thing is going to come back down? A lot of people were expecting this to come back down when it did finally. I kept saying in my last video that you had to wait to see if it lost a 21 EMA, and it finally did lose a 21 EMA, and that was on Thursday, and that had to do partially maybe with what was going on in the markets with FRC bank situation. So you did close below it, but somehow, some way, NVIDIA was able to manage and close above the 21 EMA, and then on Friday you had a very bullish day when it went as high as 277.58, the low being 270.71 before closing the day at 277.49. So bulls definitely stepped up. It was on decreasing volume, but it was, I would say, it's still on average, and you're still trading in between this what looks like is channel here, this bull flag channel here. So what are the next levels that we can see here? Obviously on the NVIDIA here, if there's continuation, because you did kind of reset the RSI here now. The HSI did cross the midline. AMP RSI looks like it wants to come up here harmonically. The next level I'd be looking at first is the completion of the pattern here at point T, which would be 281. If you break 281, you could potentially see hop at 315.03. So like I said, I'm still, if you're going bearish on NVIDIA, look to finally lose that 21 EMA. I do believe the longer this goes out, these EMAs here, the 50 EMA and the SMA, will potentially start coming up here to meet these other EMAs, in which case, if it starts getting very, very tight and they all come together and you get some volume pressure to the downside, it could get very nasty for NVIDIA. But as of now, the next level harmonically would be 281, and then 315 should it be a continuation to the upside. If you fail to come back and test or get rejected at 381, you come back to the 9 EMA at 270. What is this? 272, and then test the 21 EMA where XA is at now at 268.79, and then you have all these levels at 259, 250, and then you finally dump to the target one, maybe gap fill to complete that type 1 reaction off of this bearish bat pattern. On the weekly over here, weekly you still manage to close above XA here at 268.79 for what's 2 weeks in a row now. The HSI dot that generated kind of on an indecision candle here kind of still hasn't played out, so definitely even the weekly still a little bit bullish here, still oversold, overbought. So the HSI looks like it's starting to maybe flatline, maybe curl back up, who knows. But definitely I do think some of these breakout points will happen this week with a lot of the data that's coming out and earnings, so we will have to wait and see. So that is all I have for you guys. Sorry, Meta, I forgot Meta. Let's look at Meta here, because Meta did kind of go pretty insane here. Big winner for me this week on Meta. You had amazing earnings and you gapped up significantly from $210 all the way up to $235. Very bullish for Meta here. I did say that if you did cross that I think it was 217, that you would come up here and potentially hit that target one at 251. Very close, but on Friday you went as high as 240.43. You closed the day at 240.32. You consolidated off of bullish earnings. You did kind of reach these overbought zones here on the RSI, but the HSI is still climbing up here. So if this continues, you can see that 251, and you might get some cooling off here to reset the RSI. If I go over to the weekly here, the weekly looks amazing to me with the bullish crab pattern here. You do have a 2050 crossover on the weekly, which is the HSI. It negated this HSI dot and said, no, we're not coming down here, and you're continuing with a lot of more volume pressure to the upside here with buying pressure. So that 251 is the next target harmonically I'm looking at for Meta, and if you somehow manage to come up and break that, target 2 would be 302.07. So Meta looks very good to me right now. You might cool off a little bit here because it is a little bit overextended even on the weekly RSI, but it looks good here. The reason why I do think that you can come up to 251 here, and you're already halfway there, because the same way we came down here, we are now gapping up. So you do have a giant gap here. So if you can break up above here at 251, there's a potential here for Meta to just finish that gap here and test 302. So we'll have to wait and see. We obviously, in my opinion, that could happen if we have good positive economic data and bullish earnings all around in the market. So definitely keep an eye on Meta, because I do think this could still potentially run to the upside. But if not, you have your levels here to fill this gap here all the way down to 219, 212. Let's draw it out real quick. So you could come back down to test 235, and then the gap fill here at 214, and then test BC at 195.72, and then continue down to test these levels. But right now Meta is a little bit strong, so we'll definitely keep an eye on that. Other than that, that's all I have for you guys. I will be streaming again tomorrow 15 minutes before open. If you want to follow me on that description to my Twitch is on the description box below. I'll also if you guys want to join the Discord link will be provided as well down in the description box. So definitely consider joining if you want to learn more about harmonic analysis and provide educational videos, group sessions, and just overall just talk about harmonics and be informed and be able to make your own informed decisions. So definitely consider joining if you like this type of content. So other than that, I hope you guys have a good rest of your Sunday, and I will see you guys bright and early in the morning. Take care, everybody, and peace.